ask the State Central Committee members, Commitee, please take their seats. If you're a guest this morning, please make your way into the area, in the seated area in the back, so we can conduct our business this morning.
I need readers. That is a problem.
Again, let's ask the State Central Committee members to please take your seats, and then we'll get started. Well, good morning and welcome. The meeting of the Ohio Republican State Central and Executive Committee is hereby called to order. We begin first, as we always should, with prayer. I'd like to recognize Melanie Lenahan to offer the invocation. Melanie?
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We could all just bow our heads for a minute. I'll be brief. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you, God, that we were born for a time such as this. We praise you, God, that you have placed in each one of us everything we need to prevail and to walk in victory. We pray, Lord, that you would bless this body, this group, our leaders and our elected officials with perfect discernment, that we would recognize evil. And please, God, bless us and our leaders and elected officials with the tools and the faith to defeat and crush that evil. God, we pray that you would send armies of angels to this United States of America to defeat the enemy and his plans to destroy our great nation. We are in a spiritual battle, and we praise you, God, that he who is in us is greater than he who is in this world. And God, we pray for President Donald Trump, that you would protect him from harm and evil and the enemy's ploys, and that you would bless him with radiant health and victory over Satan. And we pray that you would end the outrageous injustice against patriots and conservatives in the United States of America. In Jesus' name, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Melanie Lenahan. I call now upon State Central Committee member Lucy Sticken. Will come on up and lead us, or you can stay there, Lucy. I think you'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Lucy, please rise first.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Lucy.
Technology, huh?
I would now like to recognize our esteemed Secretary, Tony Schrader from Putnam County, for the purpose of reading the meeting notice and the reading of the roll. The floor is yours, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Chairman. Members of the State Central Committee, you are hereby notified that the Ohio Republican Party State Central Committee will meet on Friday, September 8, 2023 at 10 a.m. at Nationwide Hotel and Conference Center, North Point Ballroom, 100 Green Meadows Drive South, Lewis Center, Ohio. Business will include reports from subcommittee chairmen, resolutions, finance reporting, convention and delegate planning, and any other business that may appropriately come before the committee. Please RSVP to Cameron Sagister via email to indicate you will be able to attend, whether you'll be attending virtually or in person. For those members who would like to use their one-time virtual appearance for this meeting, call-in information will be provided to you individually. Thank you for your service to our party. I look forward to meeting on September 8th. Call roll.
Call roll.
District 1 is me, and I am here. Gina Campbell.
Here.
Josh Cullen.
Here.
Lisa Cresciamano.
Here.
Jim Burgess Sr.
Here.
Joanne Davidson. Gary Cates. Debbie Lang.
Here.
Steve Bruns.
Here.
Jessica France.
Here.
Arthur McGuire.
Here.
Judy Westbrook.
Here.
Ron Mag.
Here.
Michelle Snyder.
Here.
Alex Trientafili.
Here.
Orlando Sanza.
Here.
Lauren Bowen.
Here.
Steve Austria.
Here.
Laura Rosenberger.
Here.
Donna Owens.
Here.
Keith Cheney.
Here.
Stephanie Kramer.
Here.
Mike Whitty.
Here.
Patty Stein.
Here.
Greg Simpson.
Here.
Gloria Kirker.
Here.
Frank Reed.
Here.
Penny Martin.
Here.
Josh Brown.
Here.
Michelle Anderson.
Here.
David Glass. Bonnie Ward.
Here.
Dan Carter.
Here.
Denise Beardy.
Here.
Gary James.
Here.
Melanie Lehman.
Here.
Jake Warner.
Here.
Sabrina Warner.
Here.
Joe Miller.
Here.
Lucy Sticken.
Here.
Bill Heck.
Here.
Zoe Romanchuk.
Here.
Brian Andrews.
Here.
Doris Peters.
Here.
Shannon Burns.
Here.
Melanie Mason.
Here.
Ron O'Brien.
Here.
Susie O'Brien.
Here.
Jonathan Zucker.
Present.
Lisa Cooper.
Here.
Brian Williams. Brian Williams. Debbie Carr.
Here.
Mike Berger. Mike Berger. Mary O'Toole.
Here.
Kurt Braden.
Here.
Christine Marr.
Here.
Jim Carnes. Jim Carnes. Leanne Johnson.
Here.
Doug Wills.
Here.
Antonia Blake.
Here.
Randy Law.
Here.
Melissa Pope.
Here.
Dave Johnson.
Here.
Allison Zwicker.
Here.
That's the complete roll, Mr. Chairman.
Chair recognizes a quorum for purposes of the meeting. We now move to the business of appointment of a parliamentarian. As is my prerogative as chairman, appoint Chris Legel serve as our parliamentarian for today's meeting. Before we move into the business of the meeting, a few friendly reminders from our last meeting as we go on today to have a good, united discussion about our party and its operations. We will try to ask each of you to keep your remarks at 2 minutes. I also ask you to address your remarks to the chair, not one another. If you could be disciplined about that. Let's do our best not to interrupt one another and conduct a fair and orderly meeting today. So the first order of business today is we have just a housekeeping item here prior to addressing the new business. Article 5, Section 4 allows members to participate once by remote location. We're still kind of having some of the fallout from some of our earlier meetings where we were meeting remotely and then we had some earlier meetings. So I think it seems appropriate, given especially some of the members who are calling in today, perhaps suspend Article 5, Section 4 for today's meeting. Do I have a motion to do that so that people can appear by remote? Gloria has made a motion. Is there a second? Melissa Pope. Any discussion on the motion and the second there on suspending the rule at this point? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Thank you. Looks like that was unanimous. On the adoption of the agenda, you'll find the agenda for today's meeting in your folder. Do I have a motion to adopt today's agenda? There's a motion by Reverend McGuire. Is there a second? Very good. I know, yep, and I know Jake wanted to make a motion perhaps to amend the agenda. I think that would be appropriate now. Jake, go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to amend the agenda to add the resolution,
the resolution that J.D. Vance is pushing in the United States Senate, the Freedom to Breathe Act. I'd like to have a motion to amend our agenda to add this resolution to our agenda today. I think if you guys remember 2020 through about 2022, how devastating lockdowns, masking, all this stuff has been proven to not be beneficial. The Democrats are talking about doing it, and you see some people out in public wearing masks these days. We really believe we should not make the same mistake twice. So my motion is to amend the agenda.
To add that one item, correct?
Yes, to add the
Is there a second?
freedom to breathe.
There's a second by Jim Any discussion? Folks, just before we begin discussion, let me say that let's add it to it, yeah. Thank you. It is to add it as a bullet number 4 to the resolution section of the agenda. That's the motion, and that's the second. So I'll open up for discussion on this. You know, we have talked about, we're talking about amending our bylaws, which I hope we'll be able to accomplish at our next meeting. By the way, there's a September 15th deadline for you all to submit changes and suggestions for that. I know some of you have already sent in suggestions and changes for our bylaws. But anyway, these resolutions are sort of coming in late and sometimes not being fully circulated. Jake and I had great conversations about this, and I told him it would be up to the body as to whether or not we discuss it. I'm trying to be fair about that. That's where we are. So I'll open it up for discussion on amending the agenda. Josh, go ahead. Yeah, you got the, oh, we don't like you, Josh.
Thanks. So I helped Jake draft this, and I called JD Vance's office and talked to his staff, and they are in support of this happening. And I think this will really help us with him, help the senator with getting this passed in the U.S. Senate. Thank you.
Other discussion on amending the agenda?
I, for one, am totally in favor of this. As was mentioned, we all were affected, but especially the businesses and the children and their, from schools and those kinds of things. So I highly, highly recommend this. Thank you.
Any further discussion on amendment of the agenda? Pastor, go ahead. Pastor, you don't need a microphone.
Thank you. I support this. Also, I want to thank Jake and those that participate with him in making this resolution possible. And I mean, for us as a body, you can fool us one time, but you ain't gonna fool us twice.
That's right.
And this is where we have to begin to have pushback.
That's right.
I mean, we're not docile. We're not just gonna lay down and let the left continue to push your narrative. But at some point in time, we have to show grit because we're in it to win it, and it's time to push back. So I'm for it.
Very good. Okay. Right now, again, what's on the table is a motion to amend the agenda. Anything further on that topic? Brian?
My question is this to apply to private schools and institutions and businesses, or is it just a public?
Federal.
The question right now in the debate, Brian, just is only on the question of amending the agenda.
Oh,
We will have,
I support that. I just.
very good. We will have a debate on the resolution when that comes up in the agenda. So the only question before us right now is whether to amend the agenda. Not hearing a whole lot more discussion on that topic. So I'll allow one more and then we'll call the question on that
I just
question.
had a clarifying question because we're talking about amending the agenda.
Do I need to, is this the point where if I wanted to add a discussion item, that I would also speak up that I wanted to add something for discussion, not for a vote for the committee, just a
So
discussion?
the only item on the floor right now is a question of that. If you have a point of privilege on the agenda, we'll deal with it after we're done
Okay.
with the current motion on the floor. Any additional questions or discussion on the, not questions, the discussion on the motion to amend the agenda to add one item? All right, we'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Very good. The agenda's been amended. Now I need a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. With that, I'll hear a motion to adopt the amended agenda. Is there a motion? Jonathan Zucker, is there a second? Pastor McGuire is seconded. We've got an amended agenda that's before you. Any discussion on the amended agenda? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Forgetting those guys. Very good. On the approval of the minutes, folks, minutes from the last regular scheduled meeting are included in your folder. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes? Motion from Doris Peters. Do I have a second? Michelle Anderson. Any discussion on approval of the minutes from the last meeting? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, our Next matter of business here is an endorsement consideration for the marijuana ballot initiative. As many of you know, there will be an issue 2 on the ballot for the November election. This initiative presents, a threat in many respects in people's view to families and employers through the state through this recreational marijuana. And at this point, I'll recognize Dave Johnson, who I know wishes to make a motion on this. Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, fellow members of the committee. I would like to make a motion to approve this resolution. I won't read it unless somebody wants me to. Before you, it basically opposes the legalization of recreational marijuana in Ohio. There's been lots of studies done in states where this has been passed, particularly in Colorado. It has had a negative impact on that state and on the communities, on businesses, on the workplace as a whole. This is bad public policy for Ohio, and so I respectfully ask of this body for support of this resolution as submitted.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Is there a second? Chairman? Discussion, folks, on the marijuana ballot initiative. Melanie, go ahead.
I would even add to Mr. Johnson's,
I would even add to his comment that after that was passed, the Democrat governor called it a mistake.
Other comments? Yes, Josh Cullen.
Just really quickly, I want to point out too that this is the measure is written in such a way that privileges certain businesses, just the same way that when we amended the Constitution for casinos, it wrote preferential treatment for certain companies into our Constitution. This isn't a constitutional amendment, but it is crony capitalism at its core. So even if you like marijuana, I don't think many people here do, it's bad public policy from that point of view as well. So I support this.
Further discussion on the resolution. Thank you, Josh. Sorry. Any further discussion? Oh, yes, Zoe.
I would also like to support this resolution. As a manufacturer, I have really grave concerns about our industry regarding this. The issue, it will have far-reaching negative effects in manufacturing on worker safety and workplace safety. Manufacturing has done a lot of, as other industries have done a lot of work regarding safety in the last dozen years, and I hate to see all of that thrown out the window. In addition, Ohio's in the middle of a huge overdose epidemic, and I'm not sure why we would open the door to another drug that would just add to that. So,
Any further discussion on the motion? Yes, Lucy, and then Shannon Commitee.
I was a resident of Colorado for over 6 years. And recently when we went back, I was proud to take my family. We're going to a lovely restaurant in what was considered the most upscale part of Colorado. I could not believe my eyes. There were young, 20, 21, 24, 25-year-olds at every corner begging with their dogs. Don't laugh, I made my husband take me to the grocery store. I bought apples, sandwiches, and dog biscuits. And I went around to feed everybody. But, you're trying to have a good time, okay? You want to enjoy Colorado, and all I could look at was that waste of humanity. I'm begging all of you, please, don't ever vote for this. Thank you.
You mean don't vote for it in the fall ballot? It seems like you're urging a yes on the resolution. Yeah, just to be fair. Thank you. Shannon.
Mr. Chairman, I'd speak in favor of the motion to amend the agenda, and I encourage our members to focus our conversation on that motion, which is, are we going to put this on the agenda to talk about later? So with that, I call the question.
Hang on, Shannon, so where we are right now is we've amended the agenda, we took a vote, we're dealing on an amendment.
Well, hey, I can screw up once, I won't twice on this topic. Then I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to go ahead and sit down then.
I'll take your cell phone away. Stop playing. Thank you, Chair.
I am. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your grace.
Thank you, Chair. Okay. I'm not. Anyone else who wishes to be heard on this question of adopting the resolution as proposed and seconded? Yes, Gary. Sometimes I forget you guys.
As a manufacturer, also, one of the things that we get to do here in the state of Ohio in dealing with workers' compensation is to put programs in place to encourage workplace safety. One of the opportunities we have is to support a drug-free workplace, which we have done for years. We get a slight break on our costs for workers' comp, but more than that, we keep our people safe. And if this were to pass in November, it's going to be hell on earth as far as I can see with our government and our employers trying to keep a workforce, which we already are desperately working to do with what's come out of COVID in our federal government and paying people to stay home. So I support the amendment, absolutely, the initiative, and vote no in November for sure.
Thank you for that, Gary. Any further discussion on this question? All right, all in favor of adopting the resolution from Dave Johnson to oppose the marijuana initiative in the fall campaign? Aye. Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, let the record reflect we are opposing this unanimously as a body and as a party. And the Ohio Republican Party will stand in opposition. So next, folks, on your agenda, and one of the reasons I snuck over to talk to the parliamentarian is this adoption of party resources policy. I know we've all had some discussions offline before here today. A good point was made to me by our member, Melanie Lenahan, made the point that this is going to get into some proprietary things about how we do the internal business of the party, and perhaps it made sense to hear that in executive session, and that made some sense to me. That'll be up to all of you whether we can do that in executive session. I certainly would be in favor of that as a voting member of this body. However, I do think I have the ability as chair of the meeting to simply move that down a little bit. We're not adopting a new matter for the agenda, we're just moving when we deal with it. I'm going to wait until we get to the treasurer's report because we are going to ask you all to vote to put us into executive session on the treasurer's report, and then we'll deal with two things in that executive session. We'll deal with party resources, the party resources policy, and our treasurer's report in that executive session. So you know why I'm passing that over. I will hear questions. Again, this is just a simple procedural thing. We'll have this discussion, you know, if things move quickly pretty soon, but I just want to do it. I think it makes sense that we do it in executive session. And frankly, instead of having Melanie make the motion in the second and hearing, I'm just going to move it down the agenda. If somebody doesn't want to hear it in executive session, we don't have to do that. Yeah, so a good point made by our executive director. The resolution, we call it the Kramer resolution because it was proposed by Stephanie. We're going to have that discussion as well in executive session, just so we. Yeah, just so we'll have a discussion about party resources and their use in executive session, assuming you all vote to go into executive session. So with that, I'm moving then immediately to a report from our building committee, an area that has kept us busy at the party, and I will recognize Keith Cheney. I'll recognize Keith Cheney to offer up a building report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our committee met on August the 29th. There were some new members to that committee. They elected me chairman. I appreciate that. I don't want to bore you with the details because I know that I have reported to this committee before. The rolling of the dice we're playing right now with the building that we currently own with our HVAC system and many other things. So we had discussed selling that building and having the chairman move forward, looking at going ahead, finding a new place, moving to a lease operation. The chairman has done his due diligence. He reported out to our committee, has found a location that not only would suit the operations of our Ohio Republican Party, but one of the nice things for all of us, we actually would be able to hold this meeting at our new office if we move forward with that lease. With that said, I would also say that I appreciate all of the due diligence. There were a number of properties that were reviewed and looked at. Our committee then decided unanimously to move forward, have the chairman execute a contract to sale, as well as execute a lease. However, that was our vote of our committee members, but I bring it to the committee as a whole to adopt the resolution that is before you which actually will give the chairman the authority to move forward with the sale of our building and execute a lease for our new office. With that said, I move the adoption of the resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second on the adoption of the resolution? Second from the chairman. Doug Wilson, that's our second. Let me kick off any discussion that we need to have on this to say that you guys, we discussed this in our first meeting that I was our chairman. And we are moving in a really good direction. We've identified a property in Grandview Heights for locals, and I've talked to locals. I know I've talked to Penny and Josh and others who live in the area just about that neighborhood. It seems nice. The best thing about this potential new space is we fundamentally believe we can meet there. We can meet in the big open space. It won't be, frankly, as spacious as this. We'll be a little more, you'll have to like each other a little more, okay? But you're gonna be a little more condensed, but we've been in there twice, measuring and everything else. We think we'll be able to do that. That would save us over $30,000. These spaces aren't cheap. And there's just something about all of you coming into the place that you are a part of operating, right? There's many of you in this room who maybe never been to party headquarters. I can tell you that the day that you all selected me to lead this party, I went over to the building and hadn't been there in 10 years. And we went upstairs and drank a beer. But seriously, like I hadn't been in the building in a long time, and many of you haven't. The building is, we've already covered on this, as the chairman said. It's just not fit for habitation. Our guys, looking for Dan, he refuses to put a window air conditioning unit in. He's got a fan. We got the door propped open on super hot days. It's just not fit for really anybody to work in it, just being honest about that. The new space is smaller. We'll do pretty well selling the building. So we're in a good place. Last thing I'll say is this. I think at this juncture, and I've talked to our lawyer, I think I probably have authorization to move forward, but in the legal business, we call it a belt and suspenders approach. So we just want to make sure we get a record resolution to this body, so to make sure we don't have any problems transferring the real estate when we finally get to sale. Okay? That's where we are today. Any further discussion, any questions? Yes.
First thing is parking. Is there?
Yeah, thank you for that. It's almost like a softball. We get 47 or 48, depending on the math, of the committed parking spaces. We won't need those day to day. We have 5 or 6 staff and some come in. But for a meeting like this, there'll be 47. Plus, we feel like there'll be 66 of you. I certainly think, famous last word, I think we should have no problem with parking on site. It's in a kind of an office park, but it's kind of a nicer office park. We're on the first floor, kind of around the back. So yeah, there's plenty of parking, Jim.
That's a concern for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Also, you have guidance from other people in the committee. You don't have complete control over what's going on in this situation, is that right? As far as, you can sign the papers, but you're doing from direction of the committee, not from...
I'm working with the building committee pretty regularly, and actually I've looped in guys like Steve Bruns, who runs a real estate company, and if anybody else has thoughts about this, let us know. On the sale of the property, Steve and I actually talked before today, so there are people who feel like they've got expertise in the real estate business. We're all ears.
Okay, that's my concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Sure. Thoughts on the motion? Go ahead. Pastor McGuire.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick question. What about the safety for the State Central Committee personnel coming in and exiting?
Yes. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, Josh. That's a relatively safe neighborhood, is it not? It looks safe to me. Very upscale neighborhood, actually. So, Penny, Grandview Heights. Yeah, it's safe there. Much safer, frankly, than where we are. I don't know if any of you have been by the headquarters. We had a car take out the fence in a car crash on the corner of 5th and Ridge. So the fence is collapsing now, which is ugly and embarrassing, but we're going to make an insurance claim for sure for the way you did it. Other thoughts, questions? I'm going to confiscate this. Chairman? I'm sorry, we're going to hear and then we're going to go to Tony. Yes. Chairman Wills, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Keith, thank you for your hard work on that. I had the privilege of working with you in the beginning when we started talking about that. And honestly, I shared that I was opposed to selling our headquarters until I had an opportunity to go back and visit the headquarters. And Keith's absolutely right. Tuscarawas County, we just reverse course, and we were going to buy headquarters, and instead was able to lease a very fine facility. So I urge the passage. You're absolutely right. The headquarters has outlived this use and could be better used somewhere else. Thank you again for your hard work, and I urge the passage of this.
Thank you, Chairman. So, any further discussion? Yes, Sabrina. Go ahead. Over here and then. Oh, and then Tony. Sorry, Tony. Sabrina, Tony, then Jonathan.
I just had a quick question about the committee. Did you guys all get together ahead of time with the whole committee, or just a few of you?
No, the meeting was called of the whole committee, and it was by Zoom. The meeting was called by the whole committee. Every member was invited to participate. It was held by Zoom on August the 29th. We had a quorum of majority.
Before August 29th, did you all get together and have a conversation?
Well, I've reported out to this committee prior every time we have met and to what our findings were of that committee.
I don't believe everyone was involved in that discussion.
Every individual of the building committee, since I've been the chairman of that committee, has been involved in all of the meetings and all of the discussion.
Prior to August 29th, not everyone was involved. Thank you.
All right, let's move on. Comments been made. Next up is Tony Schrader, Chairman.
My only comment is very straightforward. If you've done any campaign work and had to use the ORP to pick up your signs and put signs together and handle it, clean the crap out of the basement, you'd want to see that thing burned down. So I'm kind of glad we're doing this right now. Thank you, Chairman.
Before I go to Jonathan, I remember what I wanted to share with all of you. I've shared it before. This process started long before I got here. The building committee had recommended sale more than a year ago, so we're delayed, and it recommended to my predecessor in this job. Secondly, we are going to sell the property, realize a pretty significant gain on the real estate, come back to all of you, explain exactly what's going to happen with the money. It will feed back in to help pay the rents, etc. So those are all positive things that we've discussed with the committee. We've got a plan that we're working on with our legal counsel to make sure that's all properly taken care of and be totally transparent about that. Jonathan?
I have a softball question, but I think you kind of answered it already. I was hoping to make sure that it was going to be enough to cover our debt that we have on the building, and then we would have assets to go forward. We would have enough money to go forward to continue to pay for the lease.
All of that's true. And one additional thing in the discussion, and I've said this to all of you before, we have the quotes to fix the HVAC system are upwards of $300,000. My third week on the job, I came in and we have an inch of water in the basement because one of the boilers broke. It's smoke and mirrors, it's Band-Aids. We're doing everything we can just to keep the place somewhat habitable. It's not habitable anymore. And if we have to go into another winter season where we're all wearing coats, that's just not the way we ought to do it in a presidential cycle. By the way, in a state where the Republican Party is the dominant political party. Steve?
Well, I was just when you said 300,000. That was a couple years ago, so it's probably closer to 500,000.
Probably true. Yeah. Probably true. Any further discussion of the building committee and then the adoption of the resolution? Yeah, sorry, Jessica, go ahead.
I just had a quick question. So I just wanted to ask if the legal counsel had made sure that we're not going to have any potential legal problems with finding like a future committee to the cost of the building. Has that been part of a discussion, make sure that we're not going to have any issues?
Binding the committee on the cost of the building?
Yeah, like for a future, because we're making a decision on purchasing a building as well, right?
No, we're making a decision on leasing.
Okay. We did talk about a building that you guys had in mind, right? So maybe
So
I should
lease.
save this for another.
The proposal that's in your packet is that we will lease new space and then that we have authority to sell the current space. That's the resolution that's
Okay.
being
All right.
discussed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jake?
Hey, Chairman, I would say my suggestion on the lease, I believe it's a 5-year lease, right?
We haven't negotiated that number yet. We're going down that road.
Yeah, so we're selling a building I'm on the building committee, and I voted for this because it seems to me like smart business. The building is worth a lot. We're gonna sell it. We're gonna get into a place where all the utilities, everything's included in the monthly cost. It is a sizable cost. But my only suggestion, Chairman, is that you do a guaranteed renewal. Basically, we're in politics. Sabrina and I are basically a victim to a landlord not renewing a lease. You might want to, no matter how nice the landlord is right now, who knows what's going to happen in 5 years that we might be talking about that's controversial. We need to have a guaranteed renewal, or, you know, it is a lease. I guess you can rent anything at that point. But
Good
that's my
advice, and I know you shared that with me privately as well. I appreciate that in the discussion. Tina?
I'm going to add to that because the Hancock County GOP office now, they were paying $400 a month. The landlord hiked it, quadrupled it. So now it only gave them a week to get their stuff out because they said we're not going to pay that. So this is happening right now. So to Republican, and we're looking for a place to put the Hancock County GOP office now because of this. So get some guarantees. Great.
Thank you for that. Further discussion on the resolution that's been made and seconded, adoption of that resolution. Anything further? Yes.
I just have one question as a newbie, so pardon my ignorance. But when subcommittees meet, like the building committee, then is something sent out like minutes so that we can be prepared to ask questions at this meeting? Or does something else, or we just hear it for the first time after their meeting has happened?
Typically a report of the building committee, but if you ever want minutes or something after we set to the agenda, we can always get to that.
So the report comes after the meeting?
The report actually comes typically in the meeting, but if you have a suggestion to change that, we're open to it. Yeah. Any further discussion on the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor of adoption of the resolution? Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
Mr. Chairman,
You're opposed?
I'm not opposed, I have a comment.
Sure.
I'm Frank Reed, I'm District 15. I just want to say that 30 years ago, when I was 27 years old, I worked for Governor George Voinovich. And the Voinovich family made a great donation to this party in our building. And so I just want to give our recognition to the Voinovich family for 30 wonderful years of the Ohio Republican Party's headquarters.
Thank you for that. Frank's correct, and since we're talking about that, we intend fully to recognize that contribution at the new space. As a matter of fact, I was peeking behind the impressive plaque on the front of the building. This will be Cam's job to pry it off of the building and somehow take it. The building is named after Senator Voinovich. Many of you may know that he, upon retiring from the world of politics, paid off all the debt on that building for us. And then debt was reincurred in the building later, but he paid it off. And I was actually at the ribbon cutting, I think it was about 2015 or something. But anyway, we intend to continue to recognize his significant contribution because we wouldn't be sitting on this asset but for Senator Voinovich's contribution. Next up is a report from the Platform Committee. I know, Doris, we had an original first meeting. Go ahead, Doris, the floor is yours to provide a report from the Platform Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Last week, the members of the Platform Subcommittee met via Zoom to discuss editing the draft platform that was tabled at our May 5th meeting. It was decided after much discussion to follow the example of the Permanent Rules Committee and request the input and suggestions of all of you, the entire State Central Committee. So next week, each of you will receive an emailed copy of the draft platform. Please send your suggestions to Cam, our Executive Director, by Friday, October 27th, and this will all be in the email that you'll receive too. I appreciate your input and welcome your ideas. Our goal is to have our Republican platform adopted at our December meeting. Thank you.
All right, do I have a motion to accept the report of the Platform Committee? Motion by Penny, second by Jonathan Zucker. Any discussion on the report of the Platform Committee? Just to highlight, that deadline again was October 27th. This is much like what we're trying to do with our permanent rules, and that is give all of you a chance to have your voice heard on what you think ought to be in the platform, with the goal of getting to a good platform for the Ohio Republican Party. So, Any further discussion? There's a motion and a second to adopt the report. Any further discussion? Melanie?
I don't need the mic. I just think it's important for us to acknowledge that these guys have worked really hard on this, and I, for one, am very thankful to Doris and that committee because they've put in a lot of time. Appreciate it.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of adopting the report from the platform committee? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the report of the platform committee has been adopted. Now we move into the section on resolutions where we now have 4 because we amended our agenda. The first one, again, it's my prerogative here, and if all of you seemed okay with it, at least informally, that we just hold off on that resolution consideration from Stephanie, so we get to potentially executive session on the treasurer's report. So then we move to item number 2 under the resolution sections of your agenda, which is a resolution regarding issue 1. I'll call on Chris Maurer, who was the drafter of the resolution. And Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and honorable members of the committee. I'd like to begin by formally thanking Mr. Cates for a motion that he made during our May 2023 meeting. In that meeting, Mr. Cates asked that the committee oppose the abortion ballot initiative, known formally as the Right to Reproductive Freedom Amendment. While the committee affirmed that day that protecting the unborn is a fundamental value of the party, there are horrific ramifications to this amendment which were not addressed. Those include the nullification of our fundamental and long-standing parental consent and notification laws, the fact that minor children who are unable to legally order a beer will be given the constitutional right to mutilate their bodies. I believe we are doing the citizens of Ohio a disservice if we do not publicly acknowledge and stand against these aspects of the amendment. For that reason, I move that we pass the resolution before you titled Urging a No Vote on the Right to Reproductive Freedom Amendment and affirm to God and our constituents that we will protect minor children from being mutilated surgically or chemically at the hands of adults, that we will protect babies capable of living outside of the womb from being aborted, and that we will protect the inherent rights of parents by upholding basic and long-standing parental consent and notification laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Second from Lisa. Is there discussion? Melanie? And then Joe.
I don't think there'll be any dissent in this room. However, I recently did a radio show, and I just want to note that this is more of a human rights issue at this point, about killing a baby that's viable outside of the womb. It's a human rights issue. It's not even an abortion issue. Mutilating a minor child, that's a human rights issue. And I would encourage everybody to consider that. This goes beyond abortion, and this goes beyond transgenderism. This is disgraceful. I can't even believe that we have to discuss this. I can't even believe that this is on our ballot. So I have no doubt that everybody here is going to join in support of this, but I think all of us need to be recognizing this for what it really is, and it's a human rights issue.
Joe Miller, then back to Josh Cullen. Joe had his hand up first there, Josh.
Okay, all right. Thank you. No one's going to disagree with this resolution we're going to put forward, but I think that the important thing is that, like the second page where it says you've got to notify the 88 county chairman to make sure that they move on this, and we get a press release out, and we just need to kick some people in the rear, so to speak, so that we don't end up what happened in August, okay? I mean, in August, we could have put the amendment at 60%, the Constitution Amendment, which would have made this harder to pass in November. We got to get everybody motivated on board with this because this will just kill the state of Ohio. If this thing passes in November, my God, I think we're all gonna wanna move out of here, you know? So, and it won't pass if we all get on board with it as much as we can. So that's my, that's what I want to make sure, that we get this out to all 88 county chairmen and news releases and everything, that the party is saying, you know, we gotta vote no, and hopefully that'll encourage others.
Thank you, Joe. Josh, Cullen.
I'm pretty sure we're all in 100% agreement here. So this is demonic, and the time that we're going to spend talking about it is time we're not knocking on doors. So if it's appropriate, I'd like to call a question. Can I do that?
I think we've had significant debate, and the chair agrees. I'll call the question. All in favor of adopting the resolution?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Let the record reflect here that we stand 100% united for life. Next on your agenda is a resolution in support of partisan school board races. And again, I believe this was drafted by Jessica France. I mean, we assigned your name to it just so we can let you speak to it. So Jessica, I'll let you speak in support now of the resolution in support of partisan school races.
All right, so we put this resolution forward because we believe it will be a huge benefit, especially in our larger rural areas, and that it will help to realign the focus of the party to our future, and the future is our children. And we really need to make sure that they're not going to be put into indoctrination camps. This also is a great way that we can kind of push back against the Ohio School Board Association, who claims that they are nonpartisan at the same time as they're pushing woke ideology. And we believe the best way to get them out of power is to elect all Republicans and not to do anything with the Ohio School Board Association. I wanted to read from the Fordham Institute, which is a conservative think tank that many of you may already have some familiarity with. They've actually recommended for the past 5 years that our school boards become partisan. And according to the Institute, given the important role of school boards, voters should have the information needed to select candidates that reflect their ideas. In most elections, citizens can rely on the party labels that appear on ballots to help guide their choices, even if they don't know much about that particular candidate. Though imperfect, these partisan ballots facilitate more informed voting than asking citizens to do background research on every candidate seeking office. Also, Fordham research shows that nonpartisan elections are frustrating to voters, and they're more likely to skip the nonpartisan races on a ballot, even though they cast votes in the elections with party labels. Nonpartisan elections depress voter turnout, which in the case of Ohio school board elections are already pitifully low due to their off-cycle schedule that doesn't align with national votes. So their research has also shown that in the nonpartisan elections where there are no party labels to go by, most people rely on gender or ethnicity to then make their decisions. We believe this is a common sense reform we need to encourage because it will give voters more information, potentially increase turnout, and enhance local accountability. If there is ideological differences about how to run schools and educate children, shouldn't the voters have an idea about where the candidates are likely to stand on the issues they care most about? School boards regularly make decisions where political attitudes come into play. Things like tax increases, how to negotiate union contracts, and what type of relation the district has with school choice. So hopefully all of you have had a chance to read through the resolution, and we would encourage you to support this today. Thank you.
Is there a second for the adoption of that resolution?
Second.
Second for, I think Josh said it first. Okay, and then we'll open discussion. Chen? Discussion. We're talking about our school board resolution.
The proper time and the proper topic today.
Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I stand in opposition to this resolution today. my district, Senate District 24, represents most of the west side of Cuyahoga County. And I can attest full in first hand knowledge where the Strongsville City Schools is in the process of being completely controlled by Republicans. And we have a great handle through good vigilance on keeping the evil out of our schools and indoctrination of our schools. Just north of us, one city above us, Berea City School District, is controlled all by Democrats. The entire school district is a Democrat stronghold. Every single city within that school district is a Democrat city. And all of the evil that we're seeing in Loudoun County, Virginia is happening right 1 mile ahead of north of where I am in Berea City School Districts. If we have 3 great candidates running for school board that would change the balance of power in that school district, intermarrying with the 1 Republican that's already there. If we had partisan races in the Berea City School Districts, none of those 3 would have a chance at all to win. And they would have no opportunity. And I think that strategically as a party, as we look at this, the evil that's happening in our schools statewide is not happening on a large scale in the rural areas. It's happening on a large scale in the Democrat strongholds, and that's where we need to win. So we need to have nonpartisan tools. In fact, what I'd encourage us to look at in the future would be a different tactic, and that would be to change the strategy statewide of voting at-large candidates and multi-vote races, which we're all familiar with. It's a very difficult one to take out a bad actor, to changing the Ohio Revised Code to being a single slot that each candidate runs for, so you can take on a candidate to take out an existing bad candidate. But I oppose this message because I think this would hurt our efforts to eliminate indoctrination in our schools, and it would be a non-starter for us. Thank you.
Discussion will continue. I'm sorry, Josh had his hand up, then we're going to go to Ron O'Brien, and then I'll go to Greg.
That's a point well taken. I want to give the other side. In the 2nd Senate District, where I live in Perrysburg, we have plausible deniability for some Republicans to knock doors for teachers union-funded school board candidates. We have 1 Republican on our school board, and all the evils and horror that you're hearing is coming to a place like Perrysburg, which used to be a red town. It is now a purple and very purple town. And I think sunlight is the best disinfectant on this stuff. So it is happening where I live, and it's giving certain elected officials the ability to support these folks, to be supported by these folks. And I think if we're going to combat teachers union cash, which is what this is all about, we need to be proud of our brand and proud of our party and run these elections as Republicans. So that's my comment. Thanks.
Next comment will come from Ron O'Brien, then I'm going to go to Greg Simpson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would echo what Mr. Burns said. I think here in Franklin County, or I guess we're in Delaware County, but here, just south of here in Franklin County, there is no way that someone with an R under their name would be elected to the Columbus School Board. Someone who has decent name ID otherwise, that doesn't have an R under their name, can run through the school board and can win that kind of race. And I think whether it's in Franklin County, the city of Columbus, or in suburban districts, I think that whenever you put in a metropolitan area an R under the name, it's going to not be a good thing for candidates from our party. So at least I would also be against doing this. And I think much like township trustees and other things, school boards were at least, whether nonpartisan, it's deemed that they're not engaged in partisan politics, although that's what we see happening now. But I think our goal ought to be elect Republicans, and at least for large parts of the state, this is going to be counterproductive.
Thank you, Ron. I'm going to go to Greg Simpson, then I'm coming back to Josh Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a former school board member for 12 years, there's only 2 things school board members can do. That's hire a superintendent and hire a treasurer. But I agree with Shannon on this one very much. I think if you work locally, get good name ID, I think you do real well. I know my home district, Milford City Schools, we elected 2 homecoming queens, not a king. And I went to that meeting and said, how come? They said, we're dictated by the legislature. The legislature tells us what to do, and of course the federal funding tells us what to do. So a lot of people realize school board members can't change a lot of things. You think they can. I'm running for school board, and what we're going to do is we're going to have a Bible on every desk, and this and this and that. You're not going to do that. You can do two things by law. You know, what Shan was saying, I think is absolutely true. You work the grassroots, and get things done that way. You get the people on the board that you want. But really, the real problem, if you want things changed, is higher up in the legislature and the feds. That's where it's done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Josh Brown is recognized. And Jessica, I'm going to give everybody a chance. I will let you talk, but under the rules, I want everybody to have a chance, and then you can come back as it's your motion. But Josh Brown, and then I'm going to go to Melanie Levin.
Mr. Chairman, I've talked to a lot of members of the committee about the issue of school boards. Also, I helped a school board race last year in a suburb, and I think that we all agree that as a party, we need to start prioritizing school board races. That's been the problem. We have not prioritized school board races. We let the unions own that territory, and they have done a lot of things that I find highly offensive. The resolution itself may or may not be perfect. I think that Jessica is on to the right idea here, but I don't know exactly what this resolution should say. Therefore, I move that we authorize the chairman to assign this resolution to a committee where it can go through the committee process, and that committee can come up with better language that would allow us to prioritize school races, but perhaps change the language in some way.
So, not to sort of hyper-procedure this to death, but I want to follow the rules. The discussion at the moment is on adoption of the resolution. A motion at this juncture in that fashion, potentially out of order, only because we're in the middle of a discussion of the motion. I'm not looking to hurt it. I think what we should do is, if you agree with Josh, you should vote no, and then we can move it into a, right? I don't want to speak for you.
I'll make a motion after the vote.
Fair enough, yeah. So procedure, I'm going to technically rule that motion out of order because we're discussing the underlying motion, okay? Which is Jessica's motion to adopt the resolution. The discussion will continue in that realm. And I had Melanie up next and then Sabrina after that. And just if you would do what you're doing, keep your hand up, I'll make sure I call on you. Melanie, the floor is yours.
Those are both really good points. Jessica's resolution has a lot of good points. But Shannon makes a very good point. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this body does not have authority to put Rs and Ds beside candidates. That's legislative?
Correct.
Okay, so there's really nothing we can do.
That's right.
So we might want to consider what we can do. And that is, we can provide the indicia to Republicans only. And when they're in a Strongsville district and they're mailing to Republicans, they'll have that advantage, knowing that when they mail to Republicans, it'll say paid for by the Ohio Republican Party. They'll get their advantage with the mail, and then they get the advantage with the Republican voter. That's something we can do, provide the indicia to any Republican school board candidate. We can't put a D or an R by it anyway, so, and those are both very good points.
Thank you, Melanie. Sabrina, you're up next on the, again, the discussion here is on adoption of the resolution from Jessica. Go ahead.
I actually am appreciative of both sides of it. We homeschool, so I don't really get too much into the school races right now. But I will say that in our town, we are a very democratic town, and I have parents reach out to me almost on a daily basis of what can we do about school board. So I do think whatever we decide, we should get involved somehow at some level. And Mr. Simpson, I'm not sure exactly with your statement where we are. They went into an executive committee, the school board did, to vote on a family unit, to bring in a family unit to the elementary school to teach about same-sex relationships, and it was passed. So they are doing things on the school board to pass different types of education to our children. So I do urge the committee to do something, whether it's putting an R or a D, but if you don't have a child in the school system right now, or you're kind of removed from that, they are coming after our children. And we get parents on a daily basis that want help, our suggestion is to homeschool your children, but not everybody can do that. So I do think it's very important that we decide on something.
Thank you. Jake, the floor is yours.
Yes, sir.
If you've already spoken, please just stand down for a minute and go ahead.
My thought is, if, the way I understand it, I've talked to Chairman Alex about this, that we can endorse school board candidates if both Central Committee, man and woman, and the chairman agree on a candidate for school board.
Jake, if you'll suspend for what, that discussion's coming, on how we're gonna do that, but just so you know, you're on the right vein, but we're gonna have that discussion in a few minutes, I think. But go ahead.
So I think this is, becomes with the party resources talk that we're gonna talk about here in a little bit. I think when that happens, when we can come into agreement on a candidate, we need to be all in for that candidate and win these elections. We have the resources, we need to make it available. You know the liberals are doing this with their candidates, with the unions and everything else. We should be able to eat their lunch with the resources we have. And sitting around and going, oh, it's nonpartisan, which is what a lot of counties are doing, is getting, I mean, they're killing us that way. We've got to get involved. It's super important to get involved in school boards. And if this resolution is it or not, I think regardless, we can't just put it in a committee and hope 6 months from now we get this done. We got elections in November, so we need to get these candidates their resources to win in this November. So
Further discussion on the resolution? Anyone? Gary has not spoken on this one yet. Lisa, did you have anything? We'll go from Gary then to Lisa.
I fully understand the concept of wanting to put our Republican Party principles and our individual ideals behind these people. I think the one thing that's been shown in this discussion is that one size doesn't fit all. And I think Melody's comment earlier about putting our resources where they can be used when people need them or want them makes a lot of sense. So for that reason, I think I would have to not want to support the resolution for going strictly to the R and the D behind the name, but yet behind the scenes do what we can do to help those people that have the ideals that we've discussed here. If I could take 1 minute, you all have a book in front of you. I didn't mean to get into this right now, but I think it's a good time when you're talking about our children. I read that book recently and I thought it summarized exactly what's going on in this country. I put a copy in front of everyone's position here today. If you're on the State Central Committee, just read it and you'll understand, and you're going to see there's a lot going on with our kids, and a lot has gone on with our children and at the colleges and so forth. So it gives you maybe a more in-depth perspective of the kind of fragmentation things that we see every day. But again, I really like that idea, Melanie, that you have about taking the resources that we have, but we make them available when it's appropriate. Obviously, we have to define some things about, who is a Republican, what are they going to do to earn that capability to be supported. So again, those are my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Gary. Lisa, you want to be next, then Penny.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add to all this, I mean, I was totally in agreement 2 years ago because I thought, I'm in a red district, so it would be great in my district, but not so great in those blue districts. But we need to make sure that the county chairs know how far they can go, because I've had county chairs say to me before, we can't get involved in that race because it's a nonpartisan race. And they need to understand that they can still get behind a candidate, and we need to be able to support them with that. But if we don't tell them what their rules are, too many of them think that it's up to the people and we can't do anything about it.
Very good. Penny Martin and then Dave Johnson.
Oh, I just wanted to call the question.
Okay, Dave had his hand up before. That's all. I'll let Dave go. And then Chairman Wills, anyone else, and then we call. We got a bunch of people that will continue to want to talk. So
I'll be real brief.
Not quite there, Penny. I appreciate it. Dave, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and the fellow members of the committee, I'll be real brief. I came here prepared to support that partisan label. I can see where it's helpful with judges. Most people don't know who school board candidates are. They look to the party leadership for direction on that, but I would defer to the urban areas, and they've got a real challenge electing people there. But I would just say the county chairmen do have the authority, and they should be urged to endorse in these nonpartisan races. We endorse for trustees and for school board races in my part of the country, at least in Columbiana County.
Thank you. I know I've got Chairman Wills and then Brian. I'm going to interject just for a minute. I'll take the prerogative of having that microphone. And also a member of the body and also a former big county chairman to say that it seems to me, and I by the way, kudos on a respectful, good discussion, just for a minute. But we're capable of it. But anyway, that being said, in my county, we did endorse some school board races the last several years that I was there, and it worked. It worked very well with targeted communities. My perception here would be, my perspective here would be that we have the discussion about party resources and then make those resources available when whatever plan we agree on today, implement that and then urge our county chairs, let our county chairs know that we had a good discussion about school board, and if you want our help consistent with the policy, come and get it. I'm pretty sure, and I have to check because it's been a couple of years, but when we ran in the Forest Hill School District, for instance, in Cincinnati, we raised money toward the effort. I believe we used the party's resources. You weren't here, but I believe we used the party resources and mail program to help those school board races because we had an orderly process of endorsing. So I guess my perspective would be that we do get involved in school board races. We find the right constructive way to do it. One of those ways would be once we agree on a party resources policy today, perhaps we put out a statement or something that says we're here to help on school board races as long as you are consistently asking for the party's help. So that's my perspective. I'll go to Chairman Wills.
Thank you, Chairman. I think you addressed a lot of what I was going to say. As chairman, I can see both sides. In my county, we strongly go after school board trustee races. It means a lot when they get that mailer and it has the indicia of the Tuscarawas County Republican Party. Now, I understand some counties just does not have the money to do that and do that mailer for chairman. Sometimes I get phone calls and say, I just can't afford to do that. So your discussion about resources, I think that's the most important thing we have today. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, did you want to speak on?
So I come from Cotter County, and in Lakewood, we're actually organizing a slate of candidates for school board. And Shannon, that's 100% right. It will make it harder for us to succeed there potentially. At the same time, if the Democrat Party is going to make a mess of our public schools, they ought to own it. And that's why I'm sympathetic to what this motion does. That being said, I think Josh's approach is probably the best approach, but if the Democrats are going to make a mess of our school systems, let's at least put their name on it, my thought.
Thank you. Let's see, who hasn't spoken yet? Gary Cates, by the way, the minutes should reflect that Senator Cates is here, because you missed a roll call, but you're here, glad you're here. Gary Cates, and then Jim Burgess. Oh, Dan, did I miss you? Sorry.
A thought occurred to me just a second ago. I think one thing we are missing is that in order to have a partisan name behind a person's name on a ballot, there must be a primary election held for that. Otherwise, what happens is, how do people designate which party they want to list and claim they're a member of if there's not a primary? So, just a thought I want to throw out there. If I'm not an attorney on this, but it seems to me that that's a step we've missed, is that anyone who runs with a partisan label, including appellate Supreme Court justices, have to go through a primary system. So, just food for thought.
Thank you, Gary. We're going to go next to Dan Carter, then to Jim. We'll go to Jim first since he's closer. Can we do that, Dan? We'll come back. Either way, it doesn't matter. You guys decide. All right, then you, Dan. Okay?
Thank you, Chairman. A little history on running for school board. My son ran for school board in Westerville, and the teachers hated him. I was there at the polling place working for him, and they come up to me and they absolutely hated him. So we need to be careful about Republicans in this situation.
Thank you. Dan Carter, the floor is yours on the adoption of the resolution, which is what we're doing.
If many of you remember James Watt, who worked in the Reagan administration, and he was an unabashed Christian, and he was asked on an NPR interview what political office did he think was the most important in the United States. And I think they were expecting to hear President this, that, and the other thing. He said, it's real easy at school boards. And they said, why? He said, because they teach values. And of course, then they snickered and said, of course, you would just oppose Christian values there, wouldn't you? And he said, and this is coming from a hardcore Assembly of God guy, he said, no. Any universally respected values. He said, because we're not teaching values now. And to go with this, I'm back and forth because I represent Lake County, which is a lot different than Cuyahoga County. And I think what I see in Lake County is they get behind their school board candidates. They push them, they work hard. I don't worry about saying, I think we don't do the label for that reason, because then it becomes our own responsibility and our own responsibility with our own party to get this out. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Dan, anyone else who hasn't? No, just because you spoke, I want to make sure others get a chance first, just in fairness. Hearing none, I'll let Melanie go. Go ahead, Debbie. Then we're going to, Debbie, Melanie, Jessica, get the last word, and then we're going to cut off the debate.
I just have one quick point to make. Just because you're a red county now might not mean that you're a red county later. And I really sympathize with what Shannon is saying, because I agree with that. And in fairness, Jessica, I know that you worked really hard at this, and I told you at first when I read it I was in agreement, but after I thought about it and all these other issues, I would be opposed to it in the form it is right now as well.
Thank you, Debbie. Melanie, the floor is yours, and Jess, back to you. And then we're going to call the questions.
I think that after listening to all this discussion, probably the most appropriate and respectful thing would be to table it and do some revisions. So I move to table it.
Jessica, if you want to withdraw based on the comment, that's one procedural way to do this. Otherwise, we're going to call the question as it is, because I don't know that the motion to table and the discussion is appropriate. Yeah, the question's been called. So I'll go back to you if you wish to withdraw it or wish to have a floor.
Can I make closing comments? It'll be real
Sure,
quick.
sure.
I just wanted to address some of the members. There's been some really great comments. I really appreciate the discussion today. Coming from a very red district, of course, having a Republican label is going to be a very positive thing for the voters in my district to see. With respect to the comment about this being primarily an issue in democratically held areas, unfortunately that is no longer, that's just not true. I served as a school board member at Bethel local school district in Miami County. We had to deal with the issue of a male claiming to be a female using the female bathrooms, and it ended up in 3 lawsuits. I had to resign, just for everybody, when I got this position, so I'm not serving on the school board now. But no, this is a fight, very rural area, by the way. So this is not a fight that is just relegated to those heavily Democrat areas. To Brian's point, I think it's good. You know, he made a good point that, you know, with the making it partisan, you know, let the Democrats hang themselves. You know, let's see how well they do, and then when they vary the school systems, everybody will start voting Republican. So I think there's been some really good discussion. I just wanted to address the point that this is not just the Democratic areas.
So in consulting with our parliamentarian, it now becomes the decision of the chair whether to allow the motion to table. I am going to allow the motion to table, so perhaps there won't be a vote to fail something like this, sending the signal that we're not want to play in school board. I can tell you, again, as a member of the body, I'm all in on doing everything we can to engage the Republican Party at the school board level. That's my view. I think it's widely shared. So I will, again, discretion of the chair, according to our parliamentarian, there's a motion to table that at this point will supersede the motion to adopt the resolution. Is there a second on the motion to table? Jake Warner makes a motion to there's a second of the motion to table this question. Is there discussion now only on the motion to table? Do I have to allow discussion on the motion? Straight to a vote on the motion to table. Thank you for that. So again, so you all are clear, we had the resolution, we had a discussion. Instead of an up or down vote on the resolution, there's now a motion on the floor that's been seconded to table. A yes means we table it, a no means we go back to consider the original resolution. All in favor?
Point of information.
Yes. Aye.
Shannon, go ahead. If you have a point of order, it can't be.
Point of order, I'm sorry. Just a clarification. In our experience in the committee before, when we tabled a motion, it was required to be brought up at the next meeting. Is that what we're experiencing here?
It's not required, there are rules.
Okay.
Brought, it's just tabled.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. With the idea, though, again, functionally, I think we work for you. My team has heard you loud and clear today. Again, I do commend Jessica for bringing this to our attention. There's a motion and a second to table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion is tabled. We've got one more resolution here, folks, and here's what we're going to do. So, coming attractions, we're going to hear Jake's, because I think I got the sense of the room before. So Jake has a motion. Well, we'll make a motion momentarily, and when Jake's done, we'll take a little 10-minute bathroom break. We'll come back and do a treasurer's report and finish out the meeting. So, Jake, you want to go ahead and make your motion to adopt the resolution that you put on everybody's chair?
Yes, sir. Chairman, I'd like to make a move that we adopt the Resolution Freedom to Breathe Act, put forward by J.D. Vance in the United States Senate. I think we need to do this. I think if you all remember what it was like in 2020, really to 22, and probably it never would have stopped if our legislators didn't step in and make a change here in Ohio. And the Democrats misuse this stuff. They use it as control. They put masks on our children. And I'll tell you, one of the ways we all communicate is, verbally, by communicating, smiling, looking at people. And these things are like muzzles on our kids. And it's difficult for them to learn how to read. It's just devastating across the board. Mandates, lockdowns, and masks don't work. They didn't work. And so my motion is that we pass this Freedom to Breathe Act resolution.
There's a resolution that you've been provided this morning. We amended the agenda so you could consider it. Is there a second on that? Josh Brown has seconded the motion. I know we had some discussion about it before. Any further discussion on adopting resolution? Josh Brown.
Thank you. I just want you to know I helped Jake draft this. All the language comes from J.D. Vance's own office, except for the last paragraph. And J.D. Vance's office put out a press release on this bill. And in that press release, there was a link to a Fox News article about the bill. So some of the language comes from that Fox News article, and some of it comes from the rest of it comes from the actual press release itself. And the last paragraph we just wrote, and it's pretty generic, non-controversial. So I just want you to know that what you're voting for is 100% not only J.D. Vance's own language, but it's also explicitly supported by him and his office. Thank you.
Further discussion on the adoption? Leanne.
I would just like a clarification on the last paragraph. I certainly support Senator Vance's position, but I want to understand how we authorize our leadership and staff to reasonable measures to aid in its passage. It has to be passed in the Senate, and J.D. Vance is one vote.
Very good. So I will allow continued discussion. Perhaps we'll come back to its drafters. At this point, though, in keeping with the idea that everybody talks before I go back to the original drafters, I'll give you a chance ultimately to respond. But anybody else have comments at this juncture on the resolution? And then I will go back to Josh toward the end of the discussion when it's his turn. I see Gary's hand first, then I'm going to Mike Whitty. Gary, the floor is yours. I'm sorry, Gary James.
I support this 100%, but I'm just wondering if we're going far enough. We had a lot of things happening right here in our own state, and this is talking about federal for the most part. So is there a possibility of expanding this to not only support what we started out with, but also support that same concept not being able to be done by our state officials as well?
So there's a resolution on the floor that's being debated, and we'll stay focused on that at this juncture. Back here to Mike Whitty. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to ask if maybe it's not the appropriate time to offer an amendment to the resolution to include basically what Gary is saying, which is to expand this to state. and potentially even local offices so that we don't have all of our local officials running amok like we did before.
So the motion to amend is, that's up to you to make one. If you have one, now would be the time to make it. Otherwise,
Okay, I move to amend to include everywhere that it refers to federal officials to insert and/or state and local officials.
I second.
we just got to be clear on what we're voting on here, folks. Give me 1 minute to pull this up. Give me 1 minute. What specifically would you like to amend in the document and where? That's the key.
I would, in the first sentence where it says any federal, I would like to add the words state and local.
Is that your motion? Is that your motion then to amend, just add the word state and local on the first bulleted paragraph, Mike?
And at the very end, after the quotations Freedom to Breathe Act, to add and similar restrictions for state and local officials.
You late? First, you right? Okay, close the gate.
Michelle, we can hear you. If you'll please just mute your line, Michelle. Mike, one more time, I got distracted. So in the very last paragraph, you're seeking to amend where it says hereby endorses and supports the freedom.
After the words freedom to breathe, act
Yes.
quotations,
Yep.
add and similar restrictions for state and local officials.
Yeah, they're gonna need it. Yeah, and where it says state. Hopefully they'll figure that out. Sure they will.
Maybe we can take a call, right? I agree.
So there's a motion, excuse me, there's a motion on the table. The question that's been raised by our parliamentarian, which is a legitimate one, is whether or not the motion is germane to the motion that's made by Jake. Jake is specifically referencing, again, I can read through it again during a break, is specifically referencing Senator J.D. Vance's Freedom to Breathe Act. I appreciate the sentiment, what you're trying to accomplish here. I get that. I just want to make sure we're accomplishing it consistent with the rules so everyone's clear on what we're doing. J.D. Vance's Freedom to Breathe Act is not germane to any state and local activity. It's a federal act, although none of us have probably read it. But that's the question at this point. So let's do this. I will, at this point, we'll leave the meeting off with a motion and a second that's been made to amend consistent with what you said. We'll take a 10-minute break at this point, call the chair. Please keep it right about 10 minutes so we can keep this moving. And we'll come back and we'll pick up, let's talk offline, but at this point, we'll pick up with that motion and that second, and procedure, we'll handle it with the right way. We stand in a 10-minute recess. Jake? Mike?
Hello, sir.
Hey.
Hey. Hi. Good meeting.
You're welcome.
Thanks for your feedback.
Boy, it'll blow your mind when you read that, and it pulls things in together that you maybe haven't seen.
Yeah, you know, you bought them for everybody.
You're welcome. Glad to do it.
Yeah,
It was, I thought it was better.
About changing to Ohio. Should I get this in the
Federal level.
The CDC used to turn this. What it says.
What is this, the J.D. Vance thing?
No. Yeah. How to take off your mask. This is in the CDC website. It says, after eating, put the mask back on, but be sure to wash and sanitize your hands again after taking it. You have to wash your hands before you take the mask off, and wash your hands before you put it back on. And after you put it back on,
The Fed would probably do something about our
Do you have to
water.
wash the mask?
well, no, it says disposable, yes, disposable masks are thrown away. But But then you have to wash But the reusable one's supposed to wash every day. This is part of the CDC guidelines.
We all know.
So what good's it?
Exactly.
Yes.
We all know.
I think it's useful. Thank you.
Also, that this committee supports the state and the state. Yeah.
This is the CDC says it's your so
Right.
Yeah? Hi, Susie. Do you know how to mute? Susie? Brian? Yes, I see. Oh, okay, you know how to mute it. Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Are these your children?
They're not. Well, she's my oldest.
Oh.
Our oldest. And Josh, we'll claim Josh. He's the new friend that we've met.
Oh, okay.
So Josh is a young man who's still in school but very involved in politics, and he's going to run for president someday.
I don't know about that. Well, we had at Erie County, we had this. I don't know. Where's your district?
We're in Licking, Fairfield, and Perry. So we're just about 20 miles east from here.
Oh, okay.
Maybe 30.
Because there's a youth organization.
Yes.
Yeah, and Aiden, the head of the youth organization, came and spoke to us. I think he's from like near the Akron area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's called.
To an event that we
It was like 37 Mays because he had to scan it. And it's like, here, you're a young guy and you should use it. But he just likes the sound of it. He says it helps him make him think and stuff like that. But I think that would be a good...
I'll have to look him up. See if he wants to come and speak at one of our events sometime. Yeah, I think it's important for them to be able to speak. And Hayden is another one of them that is also a young man who, actually, he's been to almost. He's going
And maybe you can have Aiden come and do a speech, a speaking engagement at one of your functions. Yeah, because he came and did it at our picnic, and he brought 2 of his buddies. So, but it's just so nice to see these young kids get involved. I was involved, and I remember when I was in high school, I won the Citizenship Award, and I still have I got a dictionary, and I still have it with my name printed in gold on it. Yeah, because I started getting involved when I was, and I'm an immigrant. And I got involved even before I became a naturalized citizen. So, yeah.
I think it's so important too, and I never was involved. The only reason I got involved is because of the lockdown. It really affected my life, and I'm like, what is going on around here?
Right. Well, it woke people up. Woke people up.
Yeah. So, but now it's almost as if they want to silence us again because they're like, oh, you're too awake. You're too.
Don't try to silence it.
Now. Too much.
Well, it's just like the issue 1. There's too much information on there, and it's like, and when I tell people who my blue friends, I call them, and I'm there, what about your kids? How are you going to protect your kids? And then I explain it to them, and I said, well, we didn't know that. We just thought it was about abortions. We really have to push. It's not just abortion. Right.
Marijuana though, and I didn't bring this up because it's probably not in discussion really, but right now it is legal. The officers are not arresting for marijuana use, and the prosecutors are prosecuting. Right. So it's already legal. I would like to have a resolution that urges the prosecutors and the officers to do their job and up the law. Right. Because right now we can say that it's not legal all day. I can give you countless of stories of where they're smoking all the time. Right. And the vape is how they're getting
but they can't get jobs. That's the problem. Because it's still, but if they have a drug test, because I know, and at the county, at Erie County, they do drug testing for all their employees, and we don't accept them if they have it in their system.
She was the girl that always got every time, every drug test. Why? Because they knew she didn't have anything in her system.
Oh, okay.
And now they can say, oh, we did random drug tests and, everyone came out clean. Well, that's because you skewed your information by picking people up where they show up.
Yeah.
So,
but I'm saying for employment, a lot of, especially because of workers' comp, if you say you're a drug-free workplace, before you hire people, you have to test them. Well, people don't understand.
All right, if we can all please find your seats, we're going to come back to order.
It's still against federal law.
Please make your way back to your seats. We're going to call the meeting back to order.
You're welcome.
Right.
It's good. It focuses so much good stuff.
Wish people would.
You just got to read it.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're going to call back to order here the Republican state. If you're in the public and you're joining us today, please just find your way to the back of the room. Okay, where we go? Picking up where we left off, there had been a motion and a second on amending the resolution in support of this Freedom to Breathe Act. However, there have been some discussions, and Mike, I think you wish to withdraw that motion?
That's correct.
Very good. So Mike Whitty is withdrawing his motion to amend. However, there is a new motion to amend, and that motion is as follows. And if you all are with me, you have the resolution in support of Freedom to Breathe. I was going to read it, see if anybody wanted to make the motion. I'm going to read since I've got the language. Thank you. So there will be a motion to add the following paragraph at the end. Therefore, this committee endorses, supports, and encourages adoptions of any state and local policies of similar nature. That avoids getting into the federal piece of it. Again, Josh Brown has helped with the language. Mike Whitty, do you wish to make that motion to amend?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? The second by Gloria is right next to him. So right now, we're voting on the motion to amend only, and that is to add this paragraph. So you're clear what you're voting on. Let's have a discussion if we need to. Is there a discussion on adding the paragraph? Bottom line. Yes, I will. This committee, first of all, we're therefore, this committee endorses, supports, and encourages adoption of any state and local policies of a similar nature. Okay, so that is, there's a motion and a second to add that to the the overall Freedom to Breathe Act resolution. We're voting on the motion or discussing the motion to amend. Any discussion on the motion to amend? Gary, the motion to amend.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a point of order here, or information. When we use the term local, based on the previous conversation we had here today, I like to make sure that people understand this includes school boards. That local encompasses that. Do we need to specify that, or is local sufficient to cover that?
A point of information is about the rules, and so the question is, in that sense, out of order. I'm just trying, Gary, to stay with the rules. You can, if you seek to further amend or something, that's up to you, but at this juncture, this is a motion to amend that was made and seconded, and that's what's before us. Any further discussion on the motion to amend as is?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'll be real quick. I'd like to amend it to say specifically including schools.
Okay, so there's a motion to amend, a second motion to amend, and that language would go where? Endorses, supports, and encourages adoption of any state and local policies of similar nature, including schools. Is that your motion? I don't want to state it for you.
Is that a state and local, and then comma, including school districts?
Okay, so there's a motion to further amend. This will be the second amendment made. I'm going to guess Gary Cates is going to second. Only because you wanted to do it in the first place, but he made it by amendment. You did it by point of information. You see the rule there? Sorry. Very good. Okay, so there's a second to the motion to amend. So now we're discussing the motion to amend. So stay with me, folks. We're going to have 3 votes because there's been a motion and a second. There's been a motion to add, including schools, at the end of the paragraph that I read you. We're going to first debate and vote on that. Depending on its passage, then we'll go back to the amended original motion. Depending on its passage, then we'll go to the overall resolution with the amended language. I know it gets a little heavy, but we can only amend this twice, so any further amendments are out of order. So we're going to move forward with the discussion on whether to adopt the Johnson amendment. Before we go back, well, I think we have to vote on the First Amendment before he can vote. No.
Point of order.
Go ahead.
I believe if Mr. Whitty would accept it, that could be accepted as a friendly amendment based on the content.
Let's stay consistent with the rule of the vote. Thank you for that. Further discussion on the secondary amendment made by Mr. Jones. Josh, you want to discuss the secondary amendment? Go ahead.
With all due respect to that amendment, it would be redundant. Any lawyer would understand that a school district is a local government. So it would be redundant. So I'm opposing the Johnson amendment.
Anything further on the secondary amendment? I'm going to explain this one more time before you vote, I promise, okay?
Well, can I speak to that?
Anyone else other than the person who's already spoken on this secondary amendment? Otherwise, I'll give the person who made it the last word. Okay, yes. Joe Miller, Melanie, and then back to Dave, and we'll call a question on the second amendment.
Just to follow up with what Josh was saying there, we're not all lawyers, and I think the more specific you are with the language, the better. I'd like to see the word Ohio in there instead of state. I'd like to see school boards. I'd like to see city. I'd like to see it very, very specific, more powerful.
Melanie, on this underlying discussion, right now we're discussing whether we add the language including schools at the end of the paragraph that we discussed coming out of the break. Go ahead, Melanie.
Yeah, I think it's critical that we add including schools because our legislators don't really seem to understand when they turn it into something subjective. So I think that when we should specify schools because it's really important that it be that this issue be applied in the schools.
Thank you. All right, Dave, back to you, and then we'll call the question on this, and I'll explain it one more time so you guys know what you're voting on. Go ahead, Dave.
Right, Mr. Chairman of the committee, I will just be very brief. I just think it needs to be made very clear because the biggest problem we have is schools wanting to mask our children.
Yeah.
And I just think it's clarification. It's not that big a deal. You vote it down, I don't care. But since we're having a discussion, words have meaning. So.
Great. All right, we're calling the question. Here's the question that's being called. I'm going to walk you through it. We have the original resolution. I'll call it Jake's resolution. There was a motion to amend it, made and seconded. There was a second motion to amend it. Right now, we are dealing with whether we not add the words including schools. If you want to add the words including schools, you'll vote yes. If you want to not include the word adding schools. Now, is that true? Are we adopting, do we have to have a second vote on the original amendment? Very good, thank you. So if we add the word, if you vote no, you're going to not use the words including school. So all in favor of adding the language including schools at the end of that paragraph, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? There's one nay.
Yes.
All right, very good.
Yes.
So the motion is passed to adopt, to add that paragraph to the original. Now we have to adopt the original amendment. So again, we're going to have two more votes if we're going to get this thing passed, just so you're clear. Now we're voting as to whether or not we add that paragraph that you already agreed would include schools, okay? So now this goes to the question of coming out of the meeting. We came out with this paragraph. We're moving to amend. Is there any discussion on that further amendment? Yes. Yes, here.
The earlier part of that paragraph, I believe, is referring to individuals. Would it not be appropriate to say school officials so that it becomes an issue with personnel rather than the system?
Gary, the problem is that we've amended it twice, and what you're suggesting is a motion to amend that I have to under Robert's rules, given it's the second amendment, just to keep the debate going. I've got to rule it out of order at this juncture, so, yes.
I just wanted a point of clarification. So we're keeping the therefore this September, 8th of September paragraph and then adding one after it?
Yes.
So we're also keeping the statement that says authorizes its leadership and staff to take reasonable measures to aid in its passage?
That's right.
Can Josh address Leanne's earlier question about what that means, please?
We're going to come to that, actually, so thank you.
That's not now.
It will. I'm going to everybody get a chance, and then Josh will have a chance to support his amendment. Any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, Josh, again, I told Leanne, and thank you for the reminder, that you would address her concern about that sentence about aid in its passage.
Well, we added that because it's not just enough to do a resolution and just leave it on the table. We need to actually do something to get the resolution out there. And I don't see any reason to narrow what the chairman and his staff can do in order to promote this resolution. I also trust them, and so they'd be limited by whatever measures they take have to be reasonable. In the legal world, that's a very commonly used word, reasonable. It means you have to have a reason, a good reason for what you're doing. So the purpose there is to go beyond just passing a resolution, get the resolution out there, and give the chairman discretion and his staff discretion to take measures as they see fit.
Thank you. Call the question now. The vote you're voting on is whether to add that paragraph Okay, and then we'll have one more vote as to whether we adopt the entire resolution if it's amended. All in favor of adding the paragraph as it was already amended once, please say aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now, you have before you an amended resolution that includes a paragraph that says, therefore, the committee endorses, supports, and encourages adoption of any state and local policies of a similar nature, including schools. That's been amended. You guys just agreed to amend it. Now you got to vote on the entirety of the resolution because there's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the greater motion as amended? Hearing none. All in favor of adopting the resolution?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right. Moving past that now, we're going to move into the treasurer's report section of your agenda. However, we are also going to deal with two additional questions there, the adoption of the resources policy as well as the resolution about committee resources. So at this point, we're going to seek to move into executive session. Do I have a motion to move into executive session? Second. There's a motion by Chandler Burns, second by Ron Mag to move into executive session. All in favor of moving into executive session, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed? The ayes have it. I'll ask any person who's not a member of the State Central Committee, that would include press, everyone else, we ask you to please exit the door.
All right, I believe you all can hear me now. GOP Josh here. We are in Lewis Center, Ohio at the Nationwide Hotel and Convention Center. where the Ohio Republican Party is holding their quarterly meeting. They are currently in executive session during their treasurer's report. So we are here waiting for to go back in. When the public goes back in, the camera will begin rolling again, and we will continue our coverage then. Until then, we're going to have it on the break screen. Feel free to support us on our Patreon page, making this whole stream possible. Patreon.com/GOPJosh, and we'll be back shortly. Alright everyone, GOP Josh here, giving a little bit of a recap so far as to what we've seen at this Ohio Republican Party State Central Committee meeting. So far they've endorsed a no vote on issue 1, which is about the reproductive rights, so to speak, and a no vote on issue 2, which is about reproductive freedom. That's for the marijuana issue. They endorsed a no vote on that, so currently their statewide ballot initiatives is a no and a no. They tabled a motion about partisan school board races, actually supporting school board races becoming partisan, having an R and a D next to their name. That has been tabled, and then they passed a resolution raised by Jake Warner and Josh Brown. Jake, I'm not sure their district numbers, I know Josh Brown is 16th, to actually support J.D. Vance's motion, which is the Freedom to Breathe Act, which is banning mask mandates federally. They also amended it to include state and local laws, and then Dave Johnson, actually, of the 33rd District, supported including schools into that as well, and school policies. So they're in executive session now, which means no public access besides staff, and the members can be in the room. So we're out here with the press and everyone who came to watch, just seeing what's going down. Can't really hear what's going on in the room. They have all the doors closed. They were going into the treasurer report. I believe after the treasurer report, they're going to raise into the chairman's report, which will be access to that, and we will be streaming that as well. We are streaming what we can. I'm not going to try to get any hot water with the Republican Party when it comes to the law of recording this session, so we are not recording it. Can't. So we are doing that, and we will be back with you as soon as we can. Feel free to comment in the chat, stick around, and I'll put a tweet out on my Twitter at GOPJosh20 when we're actually back from executive session. And I'll do a quick report at the end of the meeting, and then we will wrap it up. So not going to be much longer here after the executive session. It could go for however long. They could go into a lot more than just the treasurer report. They have to actually close executive session before we can come back in. So we'll see what happens there. We'll be back hopefully shortly.
30. We've managed to piece together the resources to do that. I think you all will find it very illuminating. I think you will get an inside look at what data science has meant to campaigns, and we have heard part of this modeling program. We're using it frankly to try to raise some money, but I immediately upon seeing it, I said to the team, I said, we need to invite State Central Committee members to see this. And this, just log in and you're going to hear a little bit about an analysis of issue 1 in August. I can't, the team has done a pretty good summary of that. We're going to work that up so you guys can see kind of where things were, where the votes were, and then also to get, a highly competent modeling, polling. Modeling is kind of new polling, they all kind of work together to tell us what we ought to be saying and what we ought to be doing going forward, and especially as we move into the even more important issue 1, which is the effort to protect life here in Ohio in November. So September 16th is the best way, I think, for all of us just to log in. By the way, it's only for you, no staff, no one else, no staff, I mean from the party, but no campaign staff from any of the other campaigns. This is for you and you alone, and we're going to please keep it just to you, and would love to have you log in that morning. We'll try to keep that, about an hour or so, but just let you see a little bit about what we're seeing in the data, what we're seeing works in the messaging going forward on issue 1 on this question of life. So please join us. That's part of my chairman's report, September the 16th. Continuing on in my report, our party finances, I couldn't be more the answer is I couldn't be more satisfied about our reporting efforts, largely led by these fellas in Cameron. We can always do better raising money. We'll keep doing that. I'm not afraid to ask. The one thing we've done is we've grown our finance committee. We were at 5 last time I was with all of you. We're up to 11. Our finance committee are people who commit a serious amount of money and also are putting their name on the letterhead. We're still working on that. We want to get that number even grown a little bit bigger, so that way donors get a letter that says, we all agree, now's the time to help the Ohio Republican Party, and we all have the resources, we're helping, will you join us? That's powerful in fundraising. We want to build out a really good finance committee. Speaking candidly, it wasn't really much of one, so we're building that. But the transparency, accountability of our finances was a major reason that a commitment I made to all of you, and I think we've tried to keep it. Again, more of the work of the people up here than me, but I'm pleased that it's happening. We've reconstituted a lot of our committees. I've heard a lot of positive and some negative feedback on that. We'll keep working on that. Our bylaws, our permanent rules committees led by Mark Wagner. He's not here today, but Lisa was right to remind me, somebody reminded me to make sure that you get in your changes, your suggested changes to the permanent rules by September 15th. September 15th is the deadline for permanent rules input. So please, if you have thoughts on that, I know Laura said she's got a red line version coming to us. So please just send changes that you have to that. Doris, again, was elected to lead our platform committee. We have work to do there as well. Our building committee has done great work, hopefully mostly done, and we can keep moving. Again, you've heard a little bit about the building move. I just want to tell you about that. We do have a kind of a letter of intent that we're working on for new space. I shared with all of you before that we'd like to be able to meet, probably not in December, but maybe in our 2024 year in the new space. The new space, we're excited about it. It'll fit our functions much better. It'll be a right size fit for what we do day to day. In my last chairman's report, and I'll wrap this up, I told you guys we'd roll out a whole new financial reporting and accounting system. I made that commitment to you at the end of that lengthy meeting. I think we've met that goal. We have the party's books in a much better place. I believe we've met that. We talked about sale and move of the building. We are well in the process of doing that. That's not moving as quickly as we want, but the market forces and other things, including the August election, we didn't know. Can't kind of got in the way. So those are the things we talked about. The last thing I want to talk to you all about is the convention in 2024. Many of you have been asked, and many of you have reached out to us. The various campaigns have asked you to be delegates, and you sort of don't know what to do. At the end of the day, that's your decision. The way this works, and I'm going to look to Cam to correct me because I'm still kind of working my way through all this too, but each campaign picks a slate of delegates. If the candidate wins Ohio, that's the slate of delegates that goes to the convention. Many of you have received outreach at a minimum from former Chairman Paduchik, who's running that process for Donald Trump. That's his process, that's President Trump's process. Ron DeSantis has a process as well. I know some of you have also been reached out to by him. Your choice is to how to make that work. What's the party doing? What the party's doing is we have retained the services of Natalie Bauer. Some of you may know Natalie. She's a long-time successful fundraiser. Natalie will help us do the on-the-ground things that must be done and also help us raise the significant money that it takes to put on convention operations for the state party. If you've been to conventions, you know there are breakfasts and lunches and hosted by this candidate, you know, and all this kind of good stuff that happens. They're a lot of fun, really. If you've not been, I hope you'll consider signing up to be a delegate for someone you're choosing. And we'll have an honorary delegate program as well, and we'll certainly look out for the committee to make sure that you have an opportunity to go to the convention. But Natalie Bauer is going to help us manage through that process. By the way, if you're wondering what kind of state this is, we are continuing under our rules to be a winner-take-all state. There's been at least one question about that. Those are the current rules as they exist with the RNC, and we're going to continue in that vein. So, that's my report for all of you today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate seeing everyone. There's so many of you that at this point I just consider friends. You've been great to me as I come into your counties. This leadership team is wonderful, very supportive of what we're trying to accomplish. I just want to win races, folks, for great Republican conservative candidates. I hope you'll continue to join me in that effort. So, questions I'll take from the floor, otherwise we'll move to adjourn. Yeah, Gary?
One question, I'd like first to take a moment aside to observe.
So Gary, I know what you're going to do, and I was told to maybe not, but it's your call. A member, not to jump ahead, yeah, I'm sorry. A member of this body is in a bad way in a health situation. No, sorry, Gary.
Monday is 9/11.
Oh, I'm sorry, Gary. I'm sorry.
And I would like for us to take a moment of silence to observe and memorialize all the people who lost their lives that day 22 years ago.
Thank you. Gary, I apologize. Thank you. Thank you. All right, moment of silence for that. Thank you. Any other questions, additional issues? Is there a motion to the, sorry, Jake?
Since we didn't get the, since we tabled, what is the policy currently?
There isn't one, so it's kind of an ad hoc deal, and I think what we were just talking about that. The answer is if there becomes if you have a problem with what's happening in one of your counties and the services that the party's getting, just let us know, and I'll try to work through it with you on a one-on-one basis. The policy and the effort of the policy was just to get clarity for all of you. I will say that the issues arise rarely, so it's one of the reasons I ultimately think it's right to table it at this juncture, not to belabor this meeting and have Robert's rules getting us all tangled up. So that's the policy will be to just work with the state party when there's a conflict with your county party chairman. Sabrina, go ahead.
Thank you. I was just wondering if we are going to receive signs for November, what we're doing on that, and I mean, I feel like we're behind a little bit here. We've already seen signs out.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So the signs, I believe, are going to come from the issue campaign. This is a distinction that I hope all of you understand. We're not the Issue 1 campaign. The Issue 1 campaign is a separate entity to itself. And that is as is marijuana, by the way, because we just took a position on that too. Those are standalone campaigns. They have all the money, frankly. They're the C4s. They have unlimited funds coming into those. They're unlimited. They've got massive millions of dollars coming in. So we're augmenting them. Whether we augment them with signs or not will depend on whether or not we think it's appropriate to spend the money and where they are on signs. One more thing, very important. We cannot coordinate with those campaigns. And this is part of what we're going to cover on the 16th in that Zoom. But we cannot coordinate with those campaigns. Those are federal C4 campaigns, so we're under a lot of restrictions. We cannot talk to each other. So I heard a lot of things. Well, the signs all look different, the messaging look different. It's just the federal overlords that tell us how to spend our money, tell us we can't coordinate with federal campaigns. So we're in separate silos because we have to be. So if there are signs, hopefully to protect the campaign itself, the entity that we have supported, will have yard signs. If not, we'll take a look at it, see if we can afford them. But they will have signs. We're hearing rumors, because we can't talk to them. We're hearing rumors of 100,000 signs and everything. We're looking for them too, and if we can point you in that direction without violating federal rules, we will. Yes?
I just think it'd be appropriate to thank our colleague for the gift of this.
Oh, thank you, yeah.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Gary James has offered up this fine, outstanding work All right.
You have to read it.
Did they put it on audibles? I can listen in the car. I'm listening to Jerry Ford's. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn? A motion second. All in favor of adjournment? Aye.
Hi. Lisa, talk soon. Gina, great to see you guys. Take it easy.
Stupid.
All right, let's get our stuff and Steve. You're welcome.